So I work about a quarter out. I know people that do their whole year, and I just don't have that in me. I can't think about December and January. I just can't do it. I just have a spreadsheet, and I just plot out week by week what's in it. What can I do for myself? And or if I have the UGC client, I slot them in, and then I see where I have gaps. And so a lot of, like we were talking about, how do you decide when you need to buy is really just driven by that quarterly calendar and where there are gaps.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pretty Focused podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you Michelle Goth, who is a food blogger at Blackberry Babe. And fun fact, I did some work for Michelle back in the day. And so I went and previewed some of those photos. And wow, that was quite a walk down memory lane. But I'm so glad that you're here, Michelle. I'm so glad that you are a part of our Buyers Club. And today she's really going to be diving in, and we're going to talk about some strategic planning, because you've been around. I'm going to let you talk. I don't want to share all the details, but she's going to just be sharing her experience. And I always love hearing from food bloggers, because there is more than one way to food blog, to do this thing. And I just love your experience and just like the wisdom that you bring to the table.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Why don't you start by telling us your experience with food blogging?
Sure. I've been food blogging for about 11 years. I started, like most people do, just very part-time as a hobby. Actually on Instagram, back whenever all of the pictures were like super pixelated with the weird filters. Like, that's how I started. My husband knew how to build WordPress sites, so that was just kind of a lucky skill. And he decided to, prop me up a little site to post all of my things rather than Instagram. And I did that, like a lot of people, on nights and weekends with a newborn. Just, really felt a lot of energy behind it at the time. So I pursued it. I saw revenue within a few years. Not a lot, obviously. Was still working full time. And, but got to the point where it was probably time to make a choice in 2019. So in May of 2019, I decided to go full time on the blog. My son was about to go into kindergarten, so I spent the summer mostly just enjoying him, which was great.
Yes.
Great transition. And then that September got started full time. And we were just talking about how right out of the gate, I had been in business. I was in, corporate setting. I did a lot of the budgeting, strategic planning for my company. I was very comfortable with it, but I did not do it for myself. So those first 2 years of full-time blogging, I just kind of floundered and did whatever, and tried to do everything, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, I think, sometime in 2021, I realized like I need to apply my skills and actually get a plan together. And I can't just fly by the seat of my pants anymore. It's not working. And I'm stressed. And the goal was not for me to be stressed.
Right.
Right.
You do it. You want like that freedom and that flexibility, and you want to be able to work from home and
and be present, and
and you said you're stressed the whole time.
Right. Stressed because, if you don't have a plan, everything feels equally important. So
you're so right about that.
Yes. So I did not necessarily know what success looked like yet for me, or what a good day or a good week looked like.
So, going back to like, why did you start food blogging? You had a corporate job that you were working. Right. So why bring it, like, what made you start food blogging?
I felt, and I think I have to thank my son a little bit for this, because when I had him, I started the blog the year after he was born. And I was feeling that friction that I think a lot of new moms do, which is I'm dropping my son off at daycare. I'm picking him up at 6 p.m. He's going to bed at 7:30, and I can't do this I don't want to keep doing this. I had some schooling in entrepreneurship, and had just gotten my MBA and had gone through a whole lot of different exercises and projects, of like business startups and helping businesses with their marketing plans. And I just felt like I needed to do something for myself. And, other than business at the time, my skills were like kickboxing and cooking, you know what I mean? So, cooking felt like something, especially since I was home more with a newborn, right?
You didn't want to start a kickboxing blog?
Yeah, kickboxing blog or studio or something, but it just felt like that was maybe the natural route to pursue,
Sure.
And I do feel like I'm lucky that, I'm not sure that I would have taken the step to get a WordPress up. I think I would have been an Instagram only person, right? So having my husband in the mix to help the technical side really helped make it happen. So
that's awesome. I think that what you just said resonates with so many people inside of our community.
Yeah.
Because, we've got photographers who are here. They want to work from home so they can be present with their kids. And I as much as social media and like the present day, we have struggles with it. And like, we have like a love-hate relationship with social media and everything. Man, it created so many opportunities for people like you and I to be able to like, look, be here at home. And you know what I mean? And like the kids are in the other room, well, they're at school right now, but we're there for drop off. We're there for pickup. And I mean, let's see, your son how old is he then?
He's 11 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my boys are 11 and 13.
Okay.
And so those pickup times and those conversations in the car on the way home from pickup are vital.
Yes, they are. It's really a lot of times the only time you get them to talk.
Yep.
So
it's all fresh.
And they don't have anything else to do. They're bored. So they're going to talk. And I think I am grateful that you're right. Social media is tough. And I'm not sure I'm always better for it mentally.
I know.
It has opened up and allowed me to be here.
Yeah.
And not always rushing around and not, just trying to fit things in the tiny corners of life, like I was. So, yeah. I know a lot of your folks are in the same spot. So,
yeah. I love that. And so whenever you quit in 2019, it was 2 years until you really got like your feet steady, stable underneath you. And you're like, okay, I gotta this is it now. This isn't just for fun, right? This is the job. This is bringing in income, right? Like, so I have to be strategic with what I'm going to do. And so what did that look like for you, making that shift, like from not planning to planning? How did you start planning?
I started and I think one thing that's unique about all of our businesses is that they're deeply personal. It's not just business. So I started with my why, which my why for my business it is about cooking, but it's a lot about me too, right? It's what kind of life do I want? What kind of schedule do I want to work? Where does my own health fit in to my days, right? And really kind of going through almost like journaling about what I saw for myself, which was really challenging because when you work 8 to 5, and I was also on call a lot, you're almost just kind of waiting for things to come to you, right? You're available and you have to be available. And, you're sitting at your laptop or in your cube, just waiting for things to happen to you, right?
Yep.
So I think part of my struggle in that transition was, the programming that I had of if I just sit in my chair at my laptop, I'm doing what I need to be doing. And that was not the case, so it's been a long, it's taken many years to break myself of that, of saying, even like, this is an extreme example, but I was still doing my shoots on the weekends because I was so conditioned to be at my laptop. Like, in my mind, that was still something I just fit when I could, right? It wasn't a work day. So I had a lot of work to do about what do I want my day to look like, and then within that, I only want to work 5 to 6 hours a day. I like to take late summers. Within that, what can I fit? Right.
Sure.
And so that's where the actual strategic planning started of, how much content can I do myself? How much needs to be outsourced? How much content can I update myself with writing and photos, kind of actually being able to get into the nooks and crannies and figure out what I could do. And I think the best part about getting there, although it took, a lot of iterations, was that I knew what a good week looked like.
Yeah.
Because there's always more to do.
Always
more to do. But I knew that, if I did this, and this, that it was a good, successful week for me. So that was really the shift. And along with that is also whenever things really started to grow. So,
wow,
it definitely made a difference for the business too.
So you're like, I'm on my laptop, I'm working.
Right.
Why isn't it growing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was doing things, but was it really what I needed to do to move the needle? Probably not.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of different, blogging groups and different things that pointed me in a million different directions. And I think I probably tried every tool, every project management tool under the sun and all the different things. Right. So.
Wow. So I heard you were in groups, you were in other blogging groups, right?
Yeah.
But you feel like maybe you spent a lot of time just doing busy work.
I think so.
I need to be in these groups. I need to hear what everybody else is doing. I need to you tried what everybody else was trying. You were just.
Yes. And then also, then you're clued into what's new and relevant and also what's maybe not relevant to you. And then also like, what's the new email service? What's the new project management tool? What's the new editing tool? What's this? And then I busied myself with learning all of those different things, right? As if they were change the business or transform the business, but none of them will without any direction, right?
For sure. I love that's where you started with just journaling of what you want your day to look like and what you want the life that you want to look like. Because we've talked, on other podcasts and videos before about how it's so easy to let the work steal from your why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like really convicting. And I have to, there's been like multiple times throughout my year where I'm like, oof, that's not why I'm doing this. Like, look at me. Like I have, like, I'm giving up time with them, with my boys and with my family. And so really, saying no and figuring that out is really important.
It is important. And I think it was hard for me to talk to most people about because it's hard to say, like, I'm essentially building my business around myself and my own health and my family, right? Rather than I'm building this business to have an empire and a huge team and all these things, right? It seems like it's more socially acceptable to,
have the big empire and the hustle
empire, right? Rather than have a goal be that I work out during work hours, that I get my workout done before my son gets home. That's one of my goals. So, but it can be sometimes hard to talk to other people about that and have them fully understand it. So,
yeah, you won't find that here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm not simping, but
yeah, because I think, it's just that's it. Like we can build what we want, but and that's great and that's awesome, but it's all built around my family, and so I love that. I really love that.
And I do, I have friends that are business owners that have the more traditional path, and their biggest cheerleaders,
Yes,
but
absolutely. And
I think success is just measured a little different, and I do want growth and I do want to make money, but also,
yeah, those are necessary things, right?
Yes, we all have bills to pay, but
Yes.
I want other things too. So,
I love that because when you talked about the strategic planning, you half expect to hear, well, I wanted to make X amount of dollars a year.
yeah,
And that's the goal. And then we work backwards from there.
right. Yeah. And a lot of people do it that way.
Yeah. And that's not wrong because you do need to know how much money you need to make and work your way back.
Totally. Yeah.
Because I think there are people in that position where they're like, no, this is my income and this is very important. Right. And so not saying that is bad at all, but, it is necessary to know how much you're bringing in.
Totally. Yeah.
But I love that you started with like your 3-foot circle.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it can be hard to not start with the money side. For me, I kind of compartmentalize that. That's a separate part of this, right?
Sure.
And a lot of times the money side, as far as growth and things like that, that'll just be more in tune with like budgeting. What do I need? What resources do I need? Things like that, rather than what are my values? What do I want my day to look like? Those are, to me, separate things. And I try not to mix them too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. So, because money is part of it, planning is part of it. It's not just about what you want your day to look like. There is that aspect of, okay, now let's talk about that strategic planning for the blog and the work. Like, how do you plan your recipes? How do you plan what work you're going to be doing within that time that you've given yourself?
So I work about a quarter out. I know people that do their whole year, and I just don't have that in me. It is, I can't think about December and January. I just can't do it. I work about a quarter out. And a lot of what I can handle, I know that I can do 3 or 4 shoots a week. But I have a mix of shoots that I need to do for myself. I have a UGC client that I do a lot of work for, and that need fluctuates throughout the year. So, sometimes it's 12 a quarter, sometimes it's 20 a quarter, sometimes it's, so it really, really fluctuates. And then I also do reshoots for myself that aren't necessarily photo driven. They're more short form content, like video for social. Yeah. And so I know I can do 3 or 4 or 5 a week. And so I'll start, just have a spreadsheet and I just plot out week by week what's in it, what is in it, what can I do for myself, and or if I have the UGC client, I slot them in and then I see where I have gaps. And so a lot of, like we were talking about, how do you decide when you need to buy, is really just driven by that quarterly calendar and where there are gaps.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what about because you said you do like reshoots.
Yes.
And so you've got an old post that needs updating. Is that right?
Sometimes so I have someone that does 1 to 2 reshoots on the photo side for me a month. I will occasionally do one for myself as well. But mostly what I'm doing is doing a retesting of an old recipe that a lot of times has great photos, but it doesn't have content for social. So I need like the 30-second, short form video that I could put on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. That makes sense. So
yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah. So that's become an increasing part of the load, because I didn't do video for anything in the past. So, trying to build a library of clips for each recipe. And, I will do that for new recipes, but I'm also just doing it for the old classics too.
Yeah, for sure.
A mix of those things. So,
yeah. Now, And you are doing those. You haven't hired that out or anything,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I would be willing to hire it out for sure, but I don't know of too many folks that offer it. So
okay, there are in the Buyers Club people who do video and reels too. So I think they're starting to do it more. You know, we've heard whenever we survey bloggers every year, we see some, they're like, nah, I don't do video. Video is not important to me. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
How is it not important?
I think that most of us don't want it to be important.
You're just keep telling yourself that.
Yes. And I think I was one of those people until last year when I was watching my son watch YouTube shorts. And that's like his main media consumption is YouTube shorts. And I know TikTok is, you know, like my nephews and nieces who are a little older are mainly on TikTok. I think his generation loves YouTube shorts. And I was just watching him scroll through these like 7-second funny videos, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, everything I'm doing doesn't fit that, you know? And I need to keep doing what I'm doing, but I also need to stop being stubborn about that, you know? So that,
I mean,
yeah,
you have to, for longevity, there's like a whole new generation that you have to be thinking.
Right. Well, yeah. And while, you know, I'm solidly like an elder millennial, like I love my Instagram, I love my photos, right? That's how I like things still. I still use Pinterest. Like I just, you know, I know my site will be better off if it is well supported from all angles, right? So if there's a TikTok video that supports the recipe, if there's a YouTube video that supports the recipe, everything will be better. At least that's not. So
yeah, I mean, really diversifying you're diversifying the traffic, you're diversifying awareness. You know, YouTube Shorts and TikTok, you're probably not driving traffic to the blog. You're just creating brand awareness, right?
Right. Yep. And I had to retool my brain on that one of like, you know, where is the money on this? You know, how do I make money on TikTok, right?
Yes.
But then I started seeing TikTok show up in search results and I was like, uh-oh, you know, so.
That is true. Whenever you search for things on Google, I mean, this was not food related. This was outfit related. I was like, how do you wear baggy shirts with leggings?
Yeah.
It turns out you just wear it. Like it's not rocket science.
But try not to be weird. Yeah.
But I found it like in the search results was a TikTok video. And I watched that thing like, I kid you not, like 10 times trying to pause and be like, okay, how did she style that one? How did she style that one?
Getting a bit or did she? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It's like, it is, you're right. You're so right. Those things are popping up in the search results. And you know, when you start, for those who are new to blogging, you know, you don't have to do everything. Like you're 11 years in and now you're adding on that other thing. You know, I think it is probably important. If you are starting now, video is going to be probably one of the primary things you're going to want to add, you know,
definitely
to it. But you know what, back in the day, it was like, well, you just pick your platform.
Yes. Yeah.
You just pick one and you just focus on that. And I don't feel like that's accurate anymore.
I don't think so. And I mean, unfortunately, I don't think it is. And I think it's also risky. And I think for me, it's more about the risk side of it because I've seen people build amazing businesses on Instagram. And then, you know, something happens to the algorithm and no one's seeing their stuff anymore. And they wish they had a website or they wish they had a TikTok to kind of fall back on. And so for me, especially with things that aren't blog related, I don't have any control over whether or not people see my stuff on YouTube or TikTok. And, you know, I think that's part of being an older blogger. Things come and go and you almost expect them to come and go.
I mean, look at what we've seen over the last 11 years.
Yeah.
just the market shifting and changing and algorithms changing, and like I think that's just life. That's the only constant is change, But those we saw who just built their platform just on Google, it hurt whenever Google made all the updates, right?
Yeah, it was atrocious. It was devastating. So
yeah. So back to planning. Oh my goodness. So that's what I was going to ask. Like, how do you decide what you're going to reshoot versus, or, you have somebody doing photo reshoots for you. Are you strategic with what you're choosing, or you're just like everything prior to 2023, I'm reshooting?
I have a spreadsheet that is kind of like a master tracker of all my posts and the last time they were updated with, content, last time the photos were updated. And I literally have a column that says, are photos ugly? And yes or no. And so that's just my subjective, are these photos ugly or not? And, mostly they are just the older one, right? Which is, I always tell people it's funny because I was like, I took these photos with the same camera I use now. So, but yeah, it's that in time with seasons as well.
Sure.
So for this month, we focused on 2 Christmas recipes that I will then just redo photos and get the Pinterest pins out this month in preparation for next month. So a combination of just that tracking and then also, what's coming up in the next quarter. And do I think I can give it some new life in the next quarter if I get the photos done now and I can get that out on social and Pinterest? So
sure. So with Pinterest and getting your pin out, like Christmas is next month.
Right.
Holy cow.
I know.
Like 5-6 weeks away. I can't even believe that.
Yeah. Yep.
How long, whenever you put that pin on Pinterest, how long does it take for you to start to see like traffic from that pin?
Oh my goodness. It can occasionally be a week.
Okay.
I would say a week or a year. And not a lot in between.
6 or 7.
6, 7. So yeah, that's about what we're doing right now. I used to think that if I scheduled something 6 weeks to 2 months out on Pinterest, that it would have traction in time for the peak, right? If you look at Pinterest trends and see when something peaks, it doesn't make any sense anymore. So I'm still continuing to schedule 6 weeks to, 2 months out, just in, for lack of a better thing to do.
Sure.
But I'm really seeing that it's either going to hit within a week or two and have a lot of traction, or it's going to be more of kind of the SEO Google type approach of it's going to sit for a while and then it might bubble up over time.
Okay.
So with Pinterest, I think of it as just like continuously feeding the beast. I have to feed the beast, and sometimes the beast will be nice to me, and sometimes
I think that's just the best way I've ever heard anything described whenever it comes to social media. And
right, yeah, I'm just kind of putting things into the world, and then I will do some analysis on, that one took off last week. What was the template? Let's use that template again, or things like that. True. But I'm not sure anyone really understands or knows what is best to do on Pinterest right now.
I start to say I'm hearing just recent changes to Pinterest, right? Have they gone through some updates?
For sure. Yeah. They took off the click button for a long time on a lot of accounts, which really hurt people. Mine was mostly visible, sometimes not on certain pins. I don't know. And then, lots of AI content, which stinks. But I think, for me, it's still an important platform, but views, impressions, and everything are just steadily declining, not dropping off a cliff, but, they're going down. So,
yeah. How does AI affect your strategic planning? How has AI just affected your business, or is that just you feel like is noise and you're trying to block it out and just do what you know to do?
Mostly that it's noise, and that, I don't have any control over AI knockoffs. Obviously, if somebody reported to me that there was a pen or something that was knocking off a recipe of mine, I try to report it and do something about it. But I try to block it out because I believe that with any new technology, there's a lot of people that adopt it early. There's a lot of people that like to play, I think we still have yet to see what will happen with AI as far as it actually being useful and how useful it is in the future. With recipes especially, I think it only takes a few bad experiences for somebody to be like, is this AI or not? Does this look okay? The writing weird. What's going on here? I think it only will take a few bad experiences for people to realize that, oh, this is out there,
Yeah, I've had a couple of people be like, doesn't this look so good? I'm like, no, this is AI. Don't send this to me.
I know. I've had the same thing. And I will literally, if someone on my Facebook feed shares an AI recipe, I will just comment AI. I'm like, this is AI.
I know. We got to train these people.
I know. Too good. It is too good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think it's just hard because I definitely do worry about it, but there's not a lot I can do,
Yeah. And I think that isn't there always something to worry about?
Yes. It is always something, right?
There's always going to be something.
Yeah.
Always. And so that's why, I think that you've done just a really great job of doing what works best for your business. Where we hit record, you talked about how, you heard all of the SEO stuff, right?
Yes.
And all of the SEO advice, and you take all of that advice with a grain of salt.
Totally. Yeah.
Of what is going to work for you.
Right. And the reality is, I don't think anybody in that world knows for sure, right? The algorithms are not exposed or known to people. So it's just their best guess. And so I think with time, like we were talking about, you're in business 10 plus years, you can weigh that and say, does this feel right to me or not? You don't have to jump on every wave. I will say that's, with it, like short form video, that was something I was stubborn about for probably too long. Right. So there's a balance there.
Yeah. Well. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yes, I know exactly I know exactly what you mean.
It's hard. Yes.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
It is really hard. Yeah. So when it comes to then planning new recipes, and I think this is something that a lot of food photographers, they always want to know what food bloggers want, what recipes food bloggers want, because nobody wants to waste their time. And I think food bloggers do the same thing too. Like, you don't want to put a recipe out there that your audience isn't going to love. And so I think for everybody, there's probably a little bit of unknown. Okay, not a little bit. There's probably a bit of unknown into what recipes are going to work for you.
Right.
So do you have a system that you use whenever it comes to choosing recipes that you're going to put on your blog, new recipes?
Yes. So like I said, I plan out quarterly. So there's a hefty amount of seasonality in the mix of what produce is coming in. What do people search for during that time? I also use Pinterest trends, which I think is enormously helpful because it gives you more of that big bucket of, people are searching for ground beef recipes, and that might not pop out in key search or something like that when you're looking for a keyword, right? So just general trends and themes that are happening, in addition to filling out my content bucket. So one good example I have is that I had 1 or 2 dump cake recipes that did very, very well early on. Mm-hmm. And I ended up using the Buyers Club, I think, to fill out the rest of that category.
Oh, great.
As I would see somebody post strawberry dump cake or whatever it might be, I was like, oh, grab, because I knew that Google liked my site for dump cakes. It's a recipe I know how to make. It's for me easy to replicate, easy to look at and say, okay, that's going to be good. And so that's one example of just how I use it to kind of fill out my category. I do look at key search. I have a tool through Raptive that's just very similar to key search.
Okay.
And for me, I'm looking at the possibility of kind of the 1 to 5,000 visits a month range. And I know that varies for every blog depending on how old the blog is and how authoritative it is. That's just my personal parameter of what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I really, I still am in the habit of going for longer tail keywords. So even though my blog is old and has decent domain authority, I still will look for the longer tail keyword. I'm not going to go for the chili recipe, but I might go for the steak chili or the chili with 3 beans or the spicy chili. So I still prefer to do that because I will rank faster.
Okay.
Yeah. Typically it's just less competitive, so there's a million chili recipes. There might be just a handful of steak chili recipes from a good site,
So a long tail keyword would be steak chili. It's not necessarily like 5.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be super
keywords.
Okay. Yeah, it's more specific than kind of your entry level keyword. And a lot of times you'll find in the key search tools and things that those are the easier to rank options for you. I am trying to retrain myself to go for the big keywords, to at least try.
Yeah.
Occasionally try, right?
Yes.
But that's tough because I have had success with going for the smaller keywords for so long, and it is less competitive. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So instead of fried chicken, you would say like buttermilk fried chicken.
Right.
Or Asian fried chicken, adding in those additional words.
Or cornflake fried chicken or fried chicken legs or, yeah. I'm going to go with something more specific than just fried chicken.
Okay. I think that is really helpful for photographers who are, developing exclusives to kind of think about that a little bit differently of what else they can add to it. It doesn't necessarily change the recipe unless it's like cornflake fried chicken, right?
Right.
But just that title, I think would probably grab, a food blogger's attention a little bit more than just fried chicken.
Right. And I guarantee when they post their exclusive, the blogger is going and saying, can I rank for this? What kind of traffic does this have? And also, can I rank for this or is it too competitive?
Yeah.
Especially when I'm more willing to take a risk on something that I'm developing and photographing myself than something that I'm paying for. So I want to know that, within a couple of years, there will be enough traffic on it to make it at least neutral, hopefully positive, but at least neutral. So,
yeah. And so speaking of that, when it comes to ROI of a recipe, does that factor into what you're going to buy from somebody else?
Yes, it definitely does. And I think that probably factors into pricing too, as well. How quickly something can be paid back based on the price of the recipe. I usually use my RPM from Raptive. So that's my payment per 1,000 page views to calculate that in combination with what I'm seeing on key search. So if it says that it thinks I can get 1,500 views a month, just taking that times my average RPM, I do average for the whole year because it fluctuates wildly by season. Yeah. And then just seeing how long of a runway it would be to pay back that recipe. I used to do 2 or 3 years. Now I'm doing more like 1 or 2. Just after the helpful content update. I'm finding that a lot more recipes just kind of never rank. So they're either hits or they aren't. And there's not a lot of in between. So it's also harder to get clicks, even if you are on the first page. So I'm just a little more conservative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And RPMs, like you said, they fluctuate per year. Cause I'm sure we have somebody on the other side being like, well, how much are RPMs? How much? Cause they want it just fluctuates all all year.
It fluctuates. I think it depends on what ad network you're on, what your niche is. Mine can go anywhere from 40 RPM per 1,000 views to like 70, depending on the season.
Okay.
Raptive is generally higher than Mediamine, although that's not always true depending on the site.
Yeah.
And then your type of content. So like a cocktail blogger has much lower RPMs than a general recipe blogger. Because
of the alcohol, right?
Yeah. So that's something to consider when developing like cocktail recipes, is that the payoff might be long. I do have cocktail recipes that do well, but the RPM is like 20 or 30, which is a big difference. So I have to keep that in mind. I would like to do more. I think there's room to do more on my site, but it's kind of gone to the bottom of the list because I know that they're just not going to be big earners.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there any other posts? Like I know like crafts are kind of in that same boat too.
Are they? Okay.
Well, that's what I've always heard, is that the RPMs are lower for crafts. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's another one too that might be a little bit lower.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
Are there any other like types of recipes that are lower, like health recipes? Are those like anything called healthy?
Yes. I only have a few vegan, vegetarian, plant-based type recipes on the site. I'm very meat heavy, but they do generally have a lower RPM. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I think
you have to be like careful with how you even word things, right?
Yes. Yeah. You do have to be careful. Mm-hmm.
Is that why they're lower? Is because of
it could be because of the health claims, and advertisers are just kind of cautious. It also might just be that the pool of advertisers is smaller because less people follow that diet. I've always assumed that that's the case.
Welcome to America.
There's just less people participating in that diet. I have smoker recipes that do super well traffic wise.
Yeah.
The RPMs on them are great in the summer and awful the rest of the year. So I think advertisers kind of come out for grilling related ads.
For sure.
But the rest of the year, not so much. They drop off.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say, the highest RPMs of the year are always in Q4. So the Thanksgiving and Christmas recipes are really bread and butter for a lot of us.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the companies, like the grilling companies, Grill Master, Blackstone, whatever.
Right.
Do you ever create with those types of companies in mind, knowing that they're going to be, dishing out more money during this? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've always tried to keep it fairly generic. I know a lot of people that have done well on like trigger recipes, for example. Blackstone is kind of the new one, the new trigger, right? I have always kept it more generic. Like I'll say, this is a griddle recipe and I might mention Blackstone in it, but I won't put it in the title. Same thing with like the smoking recipes. I won't say this is a Traeger specific recipe. I'll just say it's smoked, and then I'll put instructions within on here's how to use a pellet smoker. Here's how to use, your charcoal smoker. That for me is just more of a longevity thing.
Okay.
Because you do see trends within the barbecue world of what's the kind of new hot equipment. But I know a lot of people have carved out, their niche just with Blackstone or Traeger.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with hopping on the train, when it's fun, because a lot of people will want to add those recipes to their site. So,
right. Well, but what about just like the general, like you said, just the general smoking recipe, smoked meat recipes, right? Because I don't know other than like, because there's companies that sell that equipment, and they're going to be advertising. Like, does Raptive ever say like, okay, these companies advertise big, so create these types of recipes that would work with their product, or just in general, still evergreen, still like maybe not specific to that brand, but
that would be crazy helpful. If they said like, hey, Kraft has a huge ad buy this year. So,
Yeah.
feature their products in your stuff, like that would actually be amazing.
Raptive, if you're listening.
Right. Right. And I know Raptive has a huge team of ad sales folks that work directly with companies. So that's data they probably at least have some of. So.
Yeah. I mean, that would be really interesting just to kind of start picking up on the trends, right? Because of course, summer grilling and smoking recipes, smoked whatever recipes are great because that's what we're doing all summer. But then thinking about the brands doing, putting in more money. So it's like, what brands are putting more money in at Christmas? I guess everybody is technically.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that because it's so big for everybody.
Right. Hopefully everybody, but that kind of heads up would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So nothing that you know of yet, but maybe we should get a petition for that.
I think so. Yeah. I'd like to know. A lot of times I will just kind of suggest the generic option. I don't want to be too specific, or tell people that they have to use a certain brand, but
Yeah, for sure. Oh goodness. So as we wrap up, we talked about strategic planning, but man, I always love weaving and going off track because I don't feel like we went off track, but we just kind of filled in like lots of other gaps and talked about so many other things as well, all around really planning. But as we wrap up, do you have any advice for maybe new bloggers who are starting out and they're maybe feeling that like they're trying to get their feet steady beneath them?
Totally. Yeah. I think I was just at a retreat, the Eat Blog Talk retreat.
Oh, nice.
And there were a few newer bloggers there. And my advice was, there's always going to be someone doing more than you. And that's hard to accept, but it's true. There will always be someone you see that is just in your mind, just killing it. I think it's really important to just set your own parameters on what is success for you and start that early. It can change, it doesn't have to be fixed in stone, but what does a good week or month look like for you, considering everything you have going on, and try to eliminate the comparison to this person on TikTok or wherever they are that you don't know anything about their life, what their situation is, what drives them, if they're healthy or not,
Yeah.
So trying to take that out of the mix and just
root
for them rather than, to them.
Oh, I love that. I love that you just said, because you could have just said, mute them or remove them or delete them or put blinders up, but you said cheer for them.
Yes. And I think know that they're probably putting in a lot of work,
Yeah.
And
I tell people, you don't know the sacrifice.
No, you don't. And I've seen enough people, again, the benefit of being an old blogger, enough people crash out, burn out, to know that a lot of times that extreme success comes with an end that none of us want, Yeah. We all want to still be around. So
yeah, I love that. That is fantastic advice. That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was,
of course,
such a fun conversation.
It was fun. Thank you.
And I love hearing about your strategic planning. I love hearing about your business and how things are going and just really how you approach it. And I love that because that, like I said, that's what a lot of people in our community want. They want that flexibility to be able to work at home, raise their kids, or, if they don't have kids, they want to be able to work from home. Right. They want to be able to go to, I know one of our coaches talked about, she couldn't get time off to go to her grandmother's funeral, and it's like, when you have to ask other people's permission to live your life. Oh,
yeah. I think for a lot of us, that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It doesn't work. It just grinds on you. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm so thankful that you're part of our community and that you were on the podcast today so everybody could hear you and hear your story. But thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Meet you. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. If you liked it, give us a little review or rating down below. We want to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next time for another episode of the Pretty Focused Podcast.